is Jade Robran.
Good afternoon. It is 25 minutes to 2 o'clock. I hope you're having a lovely afternoon. It's time to explore our state. And today we're meeting three very influential people taking Adelaide to the world. And Adelaide is fast becoming a hotspot for global innovation. And South Australia is, in a transition, moving away from traditional manufacturing to high-tech industries of the future. And I'd like to introduce our guest. We've got Tom Hajdu, who's Chief Innovator for South Australia. He's come here fresh from Hollywood. We'll find out why very, very soon. Well, we know why, because Adelaide's the best. Also, John Lindsay, Consultant and Company Director, and Ferran Foster, who is the editor of CityMag. Guys, thank you very much for joining the program.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Tom, I'd like to start with you. You're from California. What brings you to Adelaide?
Well, California is one of the 6 Mediterranean climate zones in the world, as is Adelaide. So I'm attracted to the Mediterranean climate, but there's also a lot that Adelaide has going for it. I kind of think of it as the same climate as Southern California, with the nature from 100 years ago, the quality of life that we've lost in Southern California, and the technology today.
Now, you were awarded a Visa Australia's Distinguished Talent Visa. Tell me what you did in the US to be eligible for that.
I built what was the largest music production company in the world, based in New York and LA, and I also have a strategic innovation incubator located in California.
Okay, so the company was called Tom and Andy. Can you tell us a bit about it and what you produce, the music artists you work with? Anyone I'd know?
Well, yeah, actually there's a movie that's just premiering this weekend, but there's always something going on around the world. We've worked with a lot of people and with a lot of artists that you may know. Also worked in advertising and television, as well as film and records, but they also have been pushing on strategic innovations for a number of years.
So why did you want to get out of that and come to Adelaide? It seems like a huge life change.
Well, the world has kind of shrunk to a point now with the way the internet works, and I think one can really live just about anywhere. I actually ran my companies from New York and LA out of Santa Barbara for a while as a way of testing to see if I could really make the next step, and it was actually really easy to do. So I think it really doesn't matter where you live anymore.
This is true. Now, you are the Chief Innovator for South Australia. What's that? What does that title mean?
Well, I provide strategic advice to the government on innovation opportunities that have the potential to improve South Australia's attractiveness as an investment destination and grow the South Australia economy. Okay,
so we've copped a big knock. It almost seems like every week there's a negative Nelly story that some business is closing, or, there's something not so great happening. So how can we change that?
Well, I think there's a lot of great things happening. For example, in the context of new space, there's a big space congress coming up here in September. There's more investment in South Australian startups in new space than all of the rest of Australia put together. So when you talk about new space, you're really talking about the industrial Internet of Things, for example.
Sure.
And that then goes into agriculture, climate, logistics, smart cities, etc. So I think we're really on the cusp of a major transformation, not only in South Australia and Adelaide, but also in what I call the fourth industrial revolution.
What makes South Australia attractive? Are we a smart city?
Actually, there's a very strong knowledge base here. We have 3 very strong universities. For example, the University of Adelaide is one of the strongest universities for machine learning in the world. We're very strong in a number of core competencies. I think what we need to do now is build the businesses around the knowledge base that we already have.
Now, you recently went to the White House. Tell us about that experience. Why were you there?
We did go to the White House.
That's a pretty big excursion.
It was a long excursion. We were there because now Adelaide is the first gig city to be connected to the other gig cities in the U.S. through the U.S. Smart City GigCity initiative. So now we're positioned to be able to collaborate to create gigabit applications that will drive the digital economy forward for the next couple of decades.
Okay, so explain what a gig city is.
A gig city is, well, it's still being defined because it's still pretty new, but it basically has to do with fiber infrastructure for the internet that lets you upload and download information at gigabit speeds.
Now, a few weeks ago, the Premier announced you as South Australia's first chief advisor on the innovation. Can you tell us more about what you'll be doing?
Well, I just came back from California talking about South Australia to entrepreneurs and investors, and the feedback was actually very positive. I think I think in some respects, Adelaide is one of the best kept secrets. So I think a part of it is to express the opportunities that we have in South Australia to the rest of the world. And as I said earlier, another part is to provide strategic advice to the government going forward to help to build the new economy.
So what did you tell these potential businesses? Why were they attracted to Adelaide?
Well, it's actually quite a simple sell. Of course, I did mention the space opportunities, but in addition to that, there's the renewables that pretty much everybody in the world is looking at Adelaide right now and how we handle renewables. Also, we have the most advanced biotech precinct in the Southern Hemisphere. We also have the largest defense industry in the Southern Hemisphere. So I think there are lots of very big opportunities ahead.
In last year's budget, the state government invested almost $80 million to accelerate the state's transformation to a modern, innovative economy and create the jobs of the future. So, Tom, are we starting to see Adelaide emerging as a global hotspot for innovation with all of this support from the state government?
I think we are starting to see that. And so, for example, Fleet, which is a new space company, has moved here. The CEO's from Rome. There's another company here called Neumann. They've moved here recently. That's another space company. I think there's some real opportunities here. We have the infrastructure, and infrastructure is really what you need to build an economy.
Now, John Lindsay, you're a consultant and company director and connect smart people who get stuff done with investors. I quite like that. Talk to me about, you're part of the steering committee for the GigCity of Adelaide. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. GigCity is all about connecting innovation businesses at high speed to the internet at really affordable prices. Now, the GigCity is being rolled out in 14 precincts around Adelaide, and that's from the Stratton Centre in the city of Playford, the Adelaide Smart City Studio that's run by the City of Adelaide, the Tonsley Innovation Precinct and the neighbouring Science Park, TechPort at Osborne, Tech in SA in Theberton, Tech Park at Mawson Lakes, the Food Innovation Centre at the Wake campus of the University of Adelaide, and various co-worker spaces like the Mill, which is in the city, South Start in the city, and the St Paul's Centre, and also the art specialists, Carclew and the SA Film Corporation. So innovative businesses in those 14 precincts will be able to gain access to services, and we hope that as time passes we'll be able to connect more sites.
Why is this important?
Affordable high-speed connections are the basic communication tool of the next decade. So if we're not actually building systems around these high-speed connections and not actually making it available to see what can be done with it, we're going to be stuck, in the last decade.
Is Adelaide a world leader in regards to gig cities?
Oh, well, we are one of the world leaders in this regard, and we're trying to fill some of the gap that's being left by the not really gigabit, NBN that's that we're sort of stuck with. I mean, I was one of the early boosters for the NBN. I thought it was going to be a fabulous thing, and it really hasn't quite delivered on.
Fallen a bit
on the
flat,
promise.
hasn't it?
It has rather, and part of the problem is that it's not economic for the service providers to use. It's actually still too expensive. Now, one day this will all be solved, but and it's not our problem to solve it. What we're trying to do is to create the demand and demonstrate that it's actually easy to do, that we can produce affordable, high-speed services, and that we can bring really fast services to people who are out in the suburbs. So today, right here in the city, as I look out the window, all the buildings that are nearby, you can get reasonably affordable high-speed services in. But as soon as you go just 1 kilometre from where we're sitting, it's prohibitively expensive.
If you would like to ask John a question about, GigCity Adelaide, give us a call on 8223 0000. It sounds like, gigabyte internet is set to revolutionise the way business work, and collaboration in Adelaide. Can you tell us, about how businesses could utilise the gig?
Yeah. we're in the middle of a shift of IT services into the cloud, and ADSL services, will let one person use some cloud services adequately, but as soon as you have even a small office of people, those tens of megabits are no longer adequate. So the gigabit speed connections mean that larger groups of people can do things that are more collaborative. They can use more video. I mean, it's the sort of embarrassing thing. What's high-speed internet for? Well, one of the big applications is video. Yes, it is. And after this session, I'll be spending the rest of the afternoon on a video conference with people in Brisbane. Previously, I would have got on a plane and I'd spend the next 2 days in Brisbane face-to-face with these people. I don't need to. And that communication where you can see people's faces and hear how they hear and see at the same time, and share screens on computers and move really large documents instantly, it's a huge enabler.
Can you tell us where can businesses and startups, where can they go to access the GigCity Adelaide networks?
So they need to be in one of those 14 precincts. I suggest looking at gigcity.com.au on the internet. There's a fabulous website there that actually has the details of those precincts. Places like Tonsley, if you want to do something that's at a really large scale, the main assembly building, you can build out in fact, Renewal SA will build you a beautiful pod in the main assembly building and connect you to GigCity. But any of those other locations, the co-worker spaces, Innovisor's Cohab at Tonsley, the St Paul Centre, you'll be able to get services very soon. I can't say the exact date. I'll be stealing somebody's thunder, but you'll be able to get services very soon.
Caroline from Flagstaff Hill has called in to ask you a question. Hi, Caroline. You can ask John a question?
Oh, yes, I would just love to know. We live at Flagstaff Hill, which is suburbia in Adelaide. We are on the tail end of the Brighton Exchange, but we cannot get broadband NBN. The only satellite connection, or only connection we can get, is via satellite. John, I was wondering if you can answer why, living in suburbia, we don't live in the middle of the Simpson Desert, why we can't get NBN.
I share your pain. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I live in the eastern suburbs, and I can't get the NBN until 2020, according to the website when I checked it yesterday.
Oh, good. That's handy.
There probably is some kind of punishment for living in the eastern suburbs. So I'm in the same boat. I use a wireless service provider. There's a number of them around Adelaide. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention their name.
Yeah, go ahead. It doesn't bother me.
It's Unity Wireless, and they do wireless services. They're fabulous. I get a 40 megabit connection to my house, 10 megabits from it. My son hosts people for LAN gaming events. They love it. I think the term is low ping bastard.
What? I haven't heard of that one. But Carolyn, we've got Richard Pascoe on the show tomorrow, who is an absolute gun when it comes to all things NBN. So this is probably a question for him. So I've got your details, and we'll ask Richard Pascoe tomorrow. But he's all across the NBN and when it's been rolled out and what, where, when, and all of that. So we will answer that question tomorrow for you. John, what industries benefit from high-speed internet?
So some of the usual examples are things like medicine, transferring digital images, because X-rays aren't done on films anymore. Sonograms never were. So that's a pretty sort of classic example. And then what's called advanced manufacturing, which is essentially things like 3D printing, but also it's the reality that the future is mass customization with mass production, so that every single thing that comes off the production line is customized to the customer and sort of built immediately. But there are some less obvious things. Consultants, accountants, lawyers, engineers, insurance assessors, all of these sort of knowledge workers are using services that are located in the cloud increasingly. You don't want to put computers in your office anymore to run your email or host your web page or even to be your file server. Like, it's better that everything be in the cloud. You can access it from your computer, from your phone, from a tablet. You can access it in Adelaide, in Sydney, in Singapore. The connectivity is sort of becoming ubiquitous. So I think it's a really interesting thought experiment to try and find industries that can't benefit from access.
We'll continue this chat after the break. You're listening to 5AA with Jade Robran.
This is Jade Robran.
And we're talking about our state, and today we are meeting three very influential people taking Adelaide to the world. And Adelaide's fast becoming a hotspot for global innovation, and we've been talking about GigCity. John Lindsay is a consultant and company director here for GigCity project, and I bet there's a lot of challenges for startups, in South Australia, big tech challenges. How can we, redress some of those challenges?
Well, I think the first challenge, this is a challenge in my own little startup. I have a little cloud consultancy. Mm-hmm. So many young people leave South Australia at the first opportunity. They buy a one-way plane ticket the day they graduate. Sometimes those people can be lured back, especially if they're a little bit older now, a bit more experienced. They've got a young family because, the grandparents are in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And I also advise, look at hiring older people because they've actually got lots of experience.
Exactly.
And
there should be so much more of that.
It's crazy to miss out on that resource, and they know everybody.
Correct. Which is a really good tool here in South Australia. You can't tap into that. That doesn't work in Melbourne and Sydney, and here it's a valuable tool.
It's absolutely central. We do everything by referral in South Australia. And of course, something else with older people, they're often actually quite willing to take equity in a business, in lieu of cash, just like very young people. For the same reason, they have a sort of much more. They don't have liabilities, responsibilities, kids to put through school. The next thing I think is a lack of ambition. Aim better. Aim to build a better elephant trap. Think big.
Well, speaking of thinking big, Ferran, you started CityMag as a startup 2013, and look at it now. Tell us how it all began.
Yeah, sure. So I started CityMag with my business partner, Joshua Fanning, who's the publisher of the magazine, and it's actually really relevant to what John was just talking about. Josh thought that he was going to leave Adelaide, move to Canada, and by chance he read an article in the Australian newspaper which was talking to the founders of Oz, which was a really influential magazine in the 60s. And one of the guys who founded Oz said something like, I just don't understand why young people don't just try doing something to change things. So we gave it a go. And we created CityMag because we could see, exactly what this whole conversation has been about, that Adelaide is in a really acute stage of change. And we thought there needed to be a media brand that reflected that change, really focused on, pushing a conversation about what paths we want to take forward, what are the people who are creating change, who are the people who we could support more in creating that change. And it seems, 4 years in, we're a new media brand who prints on paper, which is a pretty silly thing to do. But it seems
it's working.
It seems like it's working, and that Adelaide has really responded to that conversation we're trying to start.
And you would have interviewed so many startups. What have been some of their challenges here in South Australia?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because I've been interviewing startups for the whole 4 years that the magazine's been around, and their challenges have evolved over that time. So initially, we had people saying that they were isolated in the fields they were working in, and that there were maybe some regulatory hurdles that they needed to get over. But now, 4 years later, those two problems aren't something that people talk about. I think they do feel a lot more connected to other people working in their industry, whether they be overseas, interstate, or locally, because we have created these really nice innovation hubs, which sounds a bit, buzzwordy, but it's a real thing that we've done. And also, people have gotten a lot more access to capital now. I think the fact that Adelaide's brand has been rising, even in a cultural sense, we're now known as kind of like a secret tourism hotspot and things like that. That's really helped businesses who aren't in the tourism sphere get investment internationally, because people go, oh, Adelaide, I've heard of that. And, it sort of puts them in a context where, that's a cool thing to invest in.
Now, do you think, Adelaide, it's more than just a lifestyle that's a draw card here? What's keeping people here now?
Yeah, I think that lifestyle question is a really interesting one, because I think the lifestyle is what people talk about a lot, but we've been able to kind of leverage the lifestyle aspects of Adelaide to create something that's more than lifestyle. So we're saying, yes, you can have a great lifestyle and the beach is 20 minutes away and there's wine 20 minutes away. Yeah, but also it's a good place to do business, and there's a progressive culture of thinking differently about things. So we start with the lifestyle, but we kind of pull it out to be something that has a lot more depth than, a bit of wine and a bit of ocean.
John was saying, days gone by, you finish school and you get the first ticket out of here. Are you finding that they're not doing that so much anymore? Or have we still got work to do?
I think there's definitely still work to be done. But I think what's really helping is that we're diversifying industries in Adelaide. I think one of the big things was, if you wanted to stay in Adelaide 10 years ago, there was a limited number of industries that would support you to do that and to be excellent in Adelaide. But now there's a lot of pockets of excellence in a lot of really kind of weird little niche industries. Tom and I were speaking about Rising Sun Pictures before we came into the studio. And these are a little Adelaide company, probably not that little anymore, but they have innovated in the film sphere. They work with, the biggest names in Hollywood all the time, and they're just like the top of the game in the international realm. So when you're a filmmaker coming up in Adelaide, now you have, the idea that you could be the best in an area of film from the city.
Which is very cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Farrin, Tom and John, thank you very much for coming into the studio. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Exciting.